Hey guys, welcome back to Sad Dad. My name's Dave Abkary and I'm a comedian out of Fresno, California, and this is a podcast where I sit down with my fellow funny friends, my fellow comedians, and we talk about dads. Hi, how are you? How's your week been? It's been kind of a productive week for me. I don't know, I got some cool stuff done, working on some cool projects right now. Working on helping a friend of mine produce a podcast, which has been really fun for me to kind of like empower somebody else like creatively, and give her some like guidance and I edited together we did a bunch of recordings last week, and I got to like edit them together for her and kind of like almost like a pilot episode and send them to her, and she was just so stoked, and so it was neat to be able to do that for somebody, and I really like it. It's like a therapy based podcast, and so I'm really excited to keep working on that project. We've got one episode in the can, and we're gonna be working on some more here real soon. So I'll let you guys know about that. Maybe we'll start like the Sad Dad Podcast Network. Whoa, what? That's crazy. And then yeah, there's been some fun shows. I did an Elks Lodge. On Saturday. It's always a wild time. We do it. It's like a charity event that we'll do, and they'll get like 200 people out to this thing, and it was, I'll be honest, it was, because it's a charity event for the entire lodge, which means that not, like, the vast majority of the audience is there, not for the comedy, but because they're just trying to be helpful and charitable, and so, and it's not a clean show either, so you just have all these just white-haired old ladies sitting around listening to our dick jokes, and I don't know, I tried to keep it clean. I was hosting it, and I got about 5 minutes into my set, and they were pretty on board, and then I don't know what material I got into that lost them, and then I changed it up, and then they still weren't on board. So it was just me dying 1,000 deaths in front of an entire Elks Lodge worth of people. I don't know. I think that, but I say that, but I don't know. They booked us to do it. They want us to do a quarterly show there. So I'm like, hell yeah. And they tip really well. I brought a bunch of my friends out to that. Past Sad Dad guests, all three of them actually, Liam Womack, Brandy Posey, and Quincy Johnson II. So it was actually a pretty baller ass show. Killer talent. It was just maybe not the right crowd. Like I said, I didn't do great. Liam did a little bit better. Brandy, they were touch and go on Brandy, but then by the time Quincy got on stage as the headliner, like the people that really didn't want to be there had kind of cleared out, and actually Quincy killed for about 35 straight minutes. So I think that's why they ended up asking us to come back. It's because Quincy's so freaking funny. So anyway, that was that's been my week. I think I'm getting sick. I don't know. My nose has been a little. My throat's been kind of hurting, but it might also be allergies. It's living in the Central Valley. It's like harvest time. There's a few crops that are being harvested right now. I think almonds are being harvested, and it's just clouds of dust, man. I don't know if you've ever seen how almonds get harvested, but there's like these little like go-kart things that they like drive between the trees, and they literally like clamp onto the trees and like shake the trees and shake the almonds out of the trees. And it's just, you watch these things during harvest, and these orchards are just a cloud of dust. And so I think that might be part of it. I don't know. I took some ibuprofen this morning, and I'm feeling pretty good right now. So, cool. Guys, I got a Sad Dad XL, Sad Dad. This is like a comfort fit. This is a episode of Sad Dad. This is like big and tall store dad, Sad Dad right now. I have a great guest today. His name is David Smalley. And David is a comedian. He is a podcaster. He's up out of LA, originally from Texas. We get into all of that. And man, this is a fun episode because we talk comedy, but one of the neat things we kind of get to nerd out about that I don't really get to do often is podcasting. And David has a really successful podcast, so you get to kind of listen to me pick his brain a little bit about that. And if you've ever thought about doing a podcast, this is a great episode for you too. David's real like insightful and forthcoming with a lot of stuff, and it's a great chat. His podcast is it's called the Dogma Debates. So it's sort of like an atheism, religious-based podcast you should all be listening to. It's really smart. And some of his guests are insane. Like he's got, he's interviewing like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Penn Jillette and Richard Dawkins, and it's just wild. So he came on. He was up performing with another guy from LA, Isaac Allen, who, all right, I love Isaac to death. This is one of the things where I always talk about how I kind of like the sort of the fun, folksy nature of my podcast, where, you know, like I've said it a million times, like I'm just sitting at my kitchen table right now, and I kind of like some of what you hear in the background. You know, sometimes you hear the birds chirping, or the cars going by, or the train, or the cows, or whatever's going on. Sometimes you hear people in the background. This is really kind of put that to the test on this episode, because our good friend, David and I's good friend, Isaac Allen, he had to take a remote acting class, and he's in one of the spare bedrooms literally screaming at one point, and David and I are just trying our best. and I don't know, I could hear it a little bit when I listened back to it this morning. You guys may or may not be able to pick up on it, depending on how good your headsets or radios are. But so yeah, I'm sorry about that. And I actually have Isaac on as a guest next week, so you'll be able to get to know Isaac a little bit too. His dog Thorin was with us too. He was walking around. You can hear his little paws click-clacking around. So anyway, I guess without further ado, let's jump into this thing, guys, and I'll catch you on the other side. So here we go, David Smalley. Got to be like a surreal realization too.
And kind of scary.
Sure, yeah.
Because it could be temporary.
Right.
You're just like, is it? We could talk about it on the show.
Oh yeah. Well, got your headphones there, and I just easy right on in, man. I just hit record 26 seconds ago. Yeah.
We're already recording.
Yeah. I just. Yeah, I get weird about the startup. I'm just like, let's just do it. Let's just talk. This was this your first time performing in Fresno? Have you been up here before? Or?
I've been through here. I did a thing in Sacramento, but I've never performed in Fresno.
Yeah, that's great, man. You're funny.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. What are your? I know you haven't gotten to see much of it. What are your thoughts on Fresno?
It reminds me of my small towns in Texas.
Is it? Yeah.
I never really thought it, because I've heard of Fresno, obviously, all through even living in Texas. You know, it's a big. To me, it was going to be a bigger city. So I'm shocked that there's cows across the street. That's how I grew up in Texas, man. I literally could not go to school without passing 3 cow pastures.
How funny! Yeah.
And so it makes me feel like I'm at home. There's literally cool Texas steers out there.
Yeah.
Like the Texas Longhorns logo is across your street, and here I am in Fresno, California. I didn't realize it was so Texas-y out here.
Yeah, I mean, it can, especially where we were at last night, which is Clovis. And I mean, I don't know if anybody explained that divide to you, but it's the Clovis is, I don't want to call it a suburb, because it's kind of its own thing, but it's sort of an offshoot of Fresno, where you have more affluent people move to Clovis, and it is a little bit more. I mean, you saw the bar we were at.
It's kind of old town.
Yeah.
So there's a small town in Texas called Cleburne that they just really sort of dug their heels in on the old saloon style stuff. And it's not a rich area by any means, but it's just preserved. It's just conserved in such a way that you want to respect it.
Yeah. And what part of Texas did you say you grew up in?
So depending on who asked me, honestly, it's the DFW area. If you're from there, Dallas, Fort Worth. If I'm really far away, I just go Dallas because it's just easier. The truth is, there's Fort Worth. If you go 35 south on Fort Worth, there's a tiny town called Everman, Texas. It's one exit, 11 churches, 10 bars, and no traffic lights. It's just this tiny town of 2,000, some 2,000 to 5,000 people. It's really small. I don't remember the exact population, but it's tiny. 2.2 square miles is the entire town. Wow. And that's where I grew up. So Everman, Texas, technically, and for people who know sort of the area, there's Fort Worth, and then there's Burleson, Everman's right in between.
Yeah. And and growing up out there, what kind of kid are you growing up? Are you a good student? Are you an athlete? What are you doing out there?
I played sort of both roles. I was a good kid to my mom. I was a good student. I had decent grades.
Yeah.
But then on the streets, I was kind of a little thuggy little gang member, jackass.
Yeah.
But I never did anything really bad. I would fight, but I never did like anything majorly illegal. We were just little hood rat teenagers.
Sure.
But overall, I was a pretty good kid. I was pretty honest with my mom, and I never snuck out, never did anything terrible. My mom could always trust me. So
sure.
For the most part, I didn't really get into much trouble.
What's fun to do out there? Like, what are the kids doing growing up? I mean, are you doing any ag farm related like hijinks? Are you?
Climbed a water tower.
Yeah.
Small town shit like that.
Yeah. That's the best.
Climbed a water tower 7 or 8 different times. Then when we were done with that, we would climb a water tower, and then probably on a weekend maybe find a water tower to climb. I don't, not a lot, Dave.
Yeah, that's real.
2.2 square miles. We did break into a gym one time with police.
Okay.
Some friends of mine were cops, and we broke into the high school gym. I say broke in, they had a key.
Okay.
We weren't supposed to be there. And then you're like, what do you do in a gym at 2 o'clock in the morning? Well, there's a fast pitch softball machine.
Okay.
In the storage.
All
and
right.
we just had batting practice in the gym at 2 a.m. with cops. I mean, that's shit you cannot say you did in L.A., right?
That's real,
that's
man.
Fun, small town
it's
shit.
That's like those cops know who your mom is, and they're like, all right, we'll have fun.
In fact, they'll only tell on you if you don't buy them weed. Like it's like, yo, bro, if you don't buy this bag, bro, I'm gonna tell your mom what you did last night. Like, damn it! Damn it! Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's funny.
Like the school resource officer, I would walk by and just like fist bump him in the hall because he was like getting high with us after school.
That's so funny. Yeah. I mean, you don't really peg. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because you're so close to Mexico at that time. I mean, I'm sure you guys had really good weed there. I mean, I know California gets.
I wasn't big on weed. I smoked a little, and then for about 2 weeks straight, I was high.
Okay.
And I mean, that 2 weeks is just erased from my memory.
How funny.
The only thing I remember is slowly coming out of it, and I needed toilet paper. And I remember walking, like, I was in such a like it's such just a fog. I remember walking into the grocery store, and I was like squinting, like in sandals, just like looking down at the ground, not wanting to make eye contact with this guy in an apron.
Right.
And I was just like, where's the toilet paper? And he goes, aisle 6. And I go, yeah, but like which way is that? Like, I didn't even want to look up at the aisle numbers. That was a moment for me where I went, I'm either smoking the wrong shit or just weed's not for me because I don't want to live my life like that.
Yeah.
And I quit smoking. I think I smoked again maybe when I was in my early 20s, and then I just
good for you.
It's just never really been my thing.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. I have a hard time with it. I mean, I always have a bad reaction. I always get real paranoid and stuff. But,
I've always been paranoid about medications and shit. I've never had a shot of alcohol in my entire life.
Yeah, you were saying that like when we were talking last night because that lady was buying you a drink and you're like, I'll have a beer. I don't really.
Man, when I was on the road with John Reap, I was telling you outside when we were in Fort Worth together. There was and you've done comedy a lot. You see where sometimes there's just a woman in the crowd, especially front row. Where it's just she is so hot it's distracting.
Yeah.
So there was a woman in the front row. And her boyfriend definitely looked like the kind of boyfriend that would not give a damn, right? And he was just like totally into the show and like, yeah, check out my hot girl. Yeah. And it was definitely one of those moments on the road where you're like, bro, this is cool.
Yeah.
And she was so hot, it was distracting. Like sitting there with her legs crossed, nice little dress, just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Where you don't want to say anything because it's so over the top obvious, but you're trying to do your set. But as a comic, you're observationally, you want to be like, God, you're gorgeous.
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Fighting it with every.
Yeah. And so after the show, so I was John's feature, so I go up and then John goes and kills for like 45 minutes. We finish and I go walking by the bar maybe 15 minutes later. The crowd had sort of dispersed. And I walk by them and they're standing at the bar and the dude goes, bro, come here. And I walk over and he goes, man, my girl wanted to meet you. She said you were her favorite comic tonight. And I was like, me?
Yeah.
I was like, John Reep just murdered this. She goes, oh yeah, we've loved John for a long time. He's a given. Right. You were just surprisingly good. Like, thank you for coming. I was like, oh, cool. They were really nice. And then he goes, and we bought you a shot. And they like slide the shot over. Oh, yeah. They had 4 shots lined up. They had gotten one for me, one for John, and they had each bought one. And they were like, we want to hang out with you guys. We want to, hang out, just, maybe chill. We have a motel. We have a hotel room down the street. If you guys want to come back and party. Yeah. And you're just like, and I just had to go, no, thank you.
That hurts. Yeah.
I know. And I was like, I don't do shots. Yeah. And I said, but I'm pretty sure John will do both of these. And I was
he
like,
seems good for it.
I was like, John. And he looks over, he like pops his head up out of the crowd. And I go, will you do 2 shots instead of 1? And he just goes, yep. And I was like, come here. And he runs over. He goes, boom, boom. Thank you guys so much for coming out. And then goes back over there. I was like, he's a cool dude. When the crowd disperses, I'm sure he'll hang out with you. But I had to pass on that shot. And every time I tell people I've never had a shot, they go, well, that's changing tonight. And it never does.
No, don't do it. I mean, good for you. I mean, don't. I think we're just too old to be peer pressured. It's it's like, go ahead and try and peer pressure me. I just don't care. I
couldn't be peer pressured when I was younger.
Every
time I climbed a water tower, it was my idea.
I was the exact opposite, man. You lean on me just a little bit, I cracked. And now, did you have like a big family? I know you mentioned your mom already, but did you have a lot of like siblings or?
No. Just so I have one sister on my mom's side and one sister on my dad's side.
I got you.
So it was pretty, and I didn't even meet the sister on my dad's side until I was 19 or 20.
Oh, gotcha.
So I just grew up with basically an older half sister. Yeah. So
okay.
That's a pretty small family.
So, and it was, your mom was single at the time? I mean, it was just kind of single working?
Yeah, no, my parents got divorced when I was 5. And then my mom just like dated, but it wasn't, it was pretty tight knit. It was just us basically. Yeah. Like my mom and, I say all the time that I was raised by 2 women. My mom and my sister basically raised me. And my dad and I'm sure we'll get into this, my dad and I had a kind of unique relationship and I can talk about why. Sure. But, for the most part, it was just like the 3 of us.
Yeah. And were you, I mean, I guess this sort of will play into what we'll talk about later, but was your mom real religious or did you grow up really religious?
Yeah, my mom's pretty religious. And when I say that, it was her belief. She never made me go to church. Yeah. But being told to fear God was definitely on the forefront. And a lot of times, though, she never really made me... This is why I'm so thankful to my mom for this. She never really connected being a good person with religion. Oh, okay. So one of the things she would often say to me is, God, I don't want to destroy this quote, but she would say, don't stop yourself from doing something wrong because you might get caught. Stop yourself because it's the wrong thing to do. Yeah. And that had nothing to do with God's watching or religion or Jesus or anything. Right. But although I was like 7 and I was like, Mom, can God see under my covers? I was exploring with things. And she goes, yes. I was like,
okay.
I was like, dang.
Damn. Sorry, God.
Even with the lights off? Like, how good is his vision up there?
That's wild. Yeah. What was the point? I mean, the division between like the religious and then you transitioning into an atheist, and I'm sure this is probably my listeners are probably like, well, that's a weird question. You don't really ask that question, Dave. Guys, I promise this will all make sense later on. We're just setting some groundwork now. That but where did where did the divide start to happen? Where did you start to see like the cracks in the facade?
So I hate to be this guy. I'll still talk about it. I just told it so much better in the book. And so I want to tell them if they want the comprehensive story. Yeah, that's It's called Baptized Atheist. As a matter of fact, if you buy the actual hard copy, I don't even get paid on that anymore. The only thing I make money on is the audiobook. So it's not even a financial thing. But I detail the story, and essentially, I was at like a 5th quarter thing. You guys have that out here? So like in Texas... high school football is where it's at. And I always said at the beginning of this conversation, I didn't really get peer pressured into much. The one thing I really look back on that where peer pressure played a role was religion.
Oh, interesting.
Because I was we call it fifth quarter. So we would have a Friday night football game, and all the kids are by themselves. Right? They're at the football game. They're teenagers.
Yeah.
And on one hand, the parents would be like, well, where are you going after the game? I think every parent was asking that. And the kids, imagine if they said church. Or yeah, your parents will let you stay out later.
Yeah.
If you're going to church after a football game.
Right.
So I think the church in that area, looking back on it, was predatory in that respect.
Oh, for sure.
They're like, these kids are alone. They just got, they're with all their friends. They don't want to go home. The way to have them hang out longer is to come to church. And then they would have these big emotional, like, have you had sex? Have you lusted after a woman? Have you thought a boy was cute? Then you've lusted after him. You've cheated on him in God's eyes. Or you cheated on your boyfriend in God's eyes if you thought another boy was cute.
Oh, jeez.
And just this making you feel like an absolute shit person.
Yeah.
Can I say absolute shit person on this show?
Oh, by all means.
Okay.
Yes, I encourage it.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. And so there was a moment, and then at the end of it, every time they would do this witness thing, and then say, "Come up and confess your sins."
Yeah, so
before
this is like evangelical stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like Southern Baptist evangelical Christianity.
Yeah, it's intense.
And I walked the aisle one day at 15 years old, and or maybe around 15, and they sort of collect you all over a month and then have baptisms once a month. They're not like the Church of Christ where they dunk you immediately.
Right.
Because the baptism in the Baptist religion is just symbolic. It's not necessary in case you die.
Sure.
And so it took me, I guess, a couple of weeks before it was my turn to be dunked. And I'm standing in the water. The listeners are going, there's more detail in the book? Like, you are giving every step of the... I farted and a bubble came up. Like, he's giving us so much stuff. No, but the preacher said, I'm standing in the water, and I remember the pastor, he says, do you believe Jesus Christ died for your sins so that you may enter the kingdom of heaven? And I said yes, because that's what I was supposed to say.
Right.
And then he said, well, then you are hereby saved in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And as he starts to dunk me, in a weird way, everything went into slow motion. And I remember thinking, why does killing the innocent pardon the guilty? How does any of this make sense? Yeah. Jesus isn't dead. He's alive back with his dad right now. And why have I never thought about this shit before? I'm standing in this water. This is creepy. And I'm under the water going, what have I just done? What have I just agreed to? I don't know any of these rules. I don't know what's going on. And then I get out of the water, and of course, I'm standing there like dripping, and I write in the book, I think the pastor must have seen the doubt on my face, because I'm just standing there like in a panic going, I don't believe this stuff at all, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what I felt like I've been named a part of a team and given a jersey. I don't know any of the plays or any of the rules. I don't know what the field looks like. I don't understand any of it, but I'm a spokesman now. And they're talking about how we're going to go win souls next Sunday, and we're going to go knock doors. And I'm like, what am I going to say to people? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything. I'm the trainer, and I've never been trained. This is ridiculous. And the pastor leans down to me, and this is the moment that changed everything for me. He leaned down and he goes, he didn't even look at me. He just leaned toward my area and he goes, son, you can't just say you believe. You have to know it to be true in your heart. And boom, I was like, I don't. I do not know this to be true in my heart. I have so many questions. So I called my book Baptized Atheist because of that story. Now, I was not an atheist in that moment. I was like, I've got to be a really good Christian. I got to read this book. I got to read the Bible. I got to figure it all out, so that I can answer these questions for other people, so that I can be helpful. I could be like a Paul. I could be some sort of evangelist. And in that moment, that motivated me to find the answers, because I just wanted to get close to God. That's all I ever truly wanted. For the Christians listening, I just wanted to get close to God. And I got so close, I saw that we didn't need one.
Fascinating, man. Wow. That's bad. Thank you for sharing that.
Problem.
I was.
Now they're going, no need to buy the book now.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that.
No, listen, I'm just playing. So the book actually details the whole journey. It's a 14-year journey of step by step, me sitting with theology professors. Because it took me about I would say 10 years before I ever actually said, I think I'm an atheist or I'm not a Christian anymore.
Sure.
So that, and then the last few years were me really kicking into high gear in atheism.
Yeah. It's funny too. Like, I mean, I had because I grew up pretty religious. My parents, like they went to like an evangelical church, and then eventually they converted to like Presbyterian but like where the wheels for religion started to like fall off for me was my folks were always like some kind of an elder or a deacon in the church or whatever, like some kind of leadership. And I started to connect some dots where like I would just overhear these conversations my mom would be having with like the pastors and the preachers and whoever. And they would always be talking about money, and not like in a nefarious way. It was always like, oh, we have these budget shortfalls and we're not going to be able to pay out this person, that person, or whatever. But then, like, it was always with the evangelical churches. The following Sunday, there was always some fire and brimstone like message, like sermon about, on Revelation and how you need to recommit to the church. And it was just like, for me in my dumb little like adolescent brain, I'm like, wait a second, like, is this really about what?
So the church is about two things. It's about money and power. Mm-hmm. And you don't get those in the same way. Mm-hmm. You get power through fear, and you get money through sympathy. Okay, so if they did the fire and brimstone, you better this, people aren't going to feel like they have deep pockets. It's not going to be. People give money when they feel good, not when they're terrified.
Right.
That's called robbery. Okay, so the church has learned there's two different waves.
Yeah.
When you want the financial bump, you talk about sympathy, you talk about the falling walls, you talk about your obligation to God. They make you feel a little guilty, and then you dig into your pockets and go, now I feel good that I've handed over this cash. And once they have your cash, then they need to control you with fear, and that's where the fire and brimstone comes from. And I bet you they just like when I do my podcast, I know what gets the big downloads, and then I know what's more fun for me.
Right.
And I do ebbs and flows. If I did what brings me downloads every single episode, it would wear out. It would burn out. If I did what made me happy every single week, I would go broke. Right. So there's ebbs and flows, and I think that's what the church does. They do what they have to do to get the money, and then they do what they need to do to scare you and to keep coming back, because next week we're going to need money again.
Yeah. Oh, man. One thing I did want to ask you about in all of this, and I don't know if you get to talk about it much on your podcast, but where does the comedy come in? Like what's your draw to stand up comedy as you're growing up in Texas? I mean, were you like a comedy nerd growing up?
For sure. Yeah. My dad sat me down and showed me Richard Pryor tapes when I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
I didn't get the jokes. I wasn't understanding what was so funny. My dad would be laughing so hard he's crying, and he'd pause it and be like, you ain't laugh. You see, your butthole ain't supposed to stretch like that. And he would like try to show me, and I'd be like, oh shit, that's funny now. And he would break down the jokes. And my dad was like, I think my dad was like a comic that never made it on stage. Otherwise known as just like an asshole, I think. He would just mess with me, and he would play, like my dad never once ever said, just kidding.
Just commit to the bit, huh?
He would commit to the bit for years. I mean, full on. Bro, I talk about this on stage. I'm going to give it to your listeners right now because you haven't seen me do this bit. This is a real story that happened.
Okay.
None of this is made up. I was 4 years old. My dad planted a joke bomb in my head that wouldn't go off for 7 years. I'm 4 years old. He pulls me aside and he goes, hey, boy, I need to tell you something. And don't you tell your mama. When you was born, there was twins, all right? There's a little boy and a turd. And the little boy died. Go play. And I just I walk off. Like, I don't understand the concept yet. I just knew I had this twin somewhere that wasn't a part of my life anymore. And then I would meet little boys at school who had twins. I would run up to them and be like, I used to have a twin too. It didn't work out, though. It didn't work. I had no idea he was fucking with me. And then I was probably like, I was 11 years old, and I was crossing the street to go to a football game. And I stopped in the middle of the street, and that bomb went off my head. And I stopped at 11, and I just turned toward my house and went, you son of a bitch! I thought I was a walking piece of shit until right now. Like this.
That's hilarious.
And it made me laugh so hard that
so
my
funny.
dad just planted that little bomb and was like, he'll figure it out.
That's so funny. My grandma, when I was growing up, my Armenian grandma, she would always call me. The word was kakodvo, and which is an Armenian word. I didn't know what it meant, but it was always like, it always seemed like a term of endearment. And I remember I was thinking about it one day, and I asked a couple of my Armenian buddies, I was like, hey, what does that word mean? And they're like, dude, that means shit ass.
Yeah, I get it. I get the Latin trace back to maybe caca or something.
Yeah, I think it's what it must have been. I don't know, but yeah. So you kind of have this. You have this comedic groundwork laid for you by your dad.
Yeah.
And so, at what point do you decide that you're like, oh, I think I am a comedian? Like,
so my dad was really funny in that weird commit to the bit type way.
Yeah.
And my mom was really quick witted.
Oh, okay.
And she still is. She's just there are so many moments in my house growing up when my mom would just snap something back and everybody would be like, ooh. Like she was like the first person that ever roasted me.
Oh, funny.
And I would try to have a comeback and she would just destroy me. I was like, God. So I started realizing at some point in my early teens that I had a little bit of both of them.
Sure.
Where I could commit to a bit. I could create a character. I could say stuff to people in their brains that they would go into their brain and they would be like, why? Like my dad stopped the car one time, pointed at a woman and said, David, her legs go all the way up to her ass. And I just stared at this woman for a minute and then started looking at my own legs and ass, looked back at my dad, and then he would just drive off. And I'm so confused for so long, and I'm like, he just wanted to look at her butt. That's all it was. But it took me a second as a kid to figure that out. And then I realized I would get into little spats with friends or little... we would call it high-siding back in the day. Where we would just like roast each other. Yeah. And I realized I was kind of quick and I could get people back with stuff. And so I tried comedy in like 2003 one time, and I didn't do very good on stage. It was kind of I didn't really understand the way it worked. I didn't understand how to write. I knew nothing about it. Sure. I was doing a live radio show at the time, and I thought I was quick enough to just go on stage and wing it, and I had like 3 jokes. Yeah. Turns out you're going to burn through 3 jokes in about 40 seconds, and then it's over, right? Yeah. And so I had these little quick one-liners, and I thought, I'll use this to get started, and then I'll just be a funny guy. Yeah. Bro, that's not the way any of this works. Right. And so I kind of stopped. I didn't do it again for like 12 years. Wow. Yeah, and then I got on the speaking circuit for like secularism and atheism. I would do like science conferences and live podcasts with like science celebrities, and I always wrote jokes into my performances. Yeah. So I had a little bit of a kind of a, and also I was a lead singer in a band, so I had stage presence, and I was a drummer for a while. So being on stage, always performing, committing to the bit has always just kind of been a part of my life. Yeah. And then my podcast blew up in Texas, and Podcast One calls from Beverly Hills. They're like, hey, we'll move you out here. Do you want to join our network? I was like, yep. And as soon as I landed, I was like, I'm getting back into comedy. I'm going to revamp all this. And that was in 2016. I just kind of relaunched myself. How cool, man. So when people say, how long have you been doing comedy? And I go, 3 years. It doesn't accurately portray my stage experience. But at the same time, it's not like I'm a veteran either. So. Sure, yeah. I mean, people get really hung up on that how many years thing. And it's like, there's a lot of people that hang their hat on that. Yeah, I know plenty of guys who've been in it 12 years who should never tell anybody that they've been in it for 12 years. Yeah, I mean, and they still have the same 20 minutes. It's like, what are you doing? And then that's another. I mean, we've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but where did how'd the podcasting come about? I mean, to answer your question about how I got into comedy, no, I mean because it kind of all ties together. Because podcasting sort of, I made a name for myself and was able to do it full time. Yeah. In 2016, so you've heard of the Reason Rally? Yeah. So in 2016 Reason Rally, I was asked to MC a comedy show. Wow. And it was already sold out before my name was ever put on it. It had nothing to do with me. There were 500 people there. Yeah. And they go, will you just be the host? And I went, yeah. Can I do like 5 minutes at the top? And they go, sure, we don't care. Yeah. And it took the pressure off because over half the crowd knew who I was because of my podcast, because they were my direct audience, which is kind of cheating because they're going to laugh if you go, "What's up, guys?" Because they just want to be in the same room if they're a fan of your show. Yeah, right? I suppose you're right. I see famous guys at the Comedy Store do that all the time. They walk up and grab the mic and go, "Sup," and people die. And I'm like, it's because he's Chris D'Elia, they just fall over because they want to be in the room with Chris. But I did. And it took the pressure off because I remember thinking, if I start bombing at any point, I can just bring up the first comic.
Right.
And so it took a lot of pressure off. So I go up on stage and I didn't bomb at all. The jokes worked, and it was a great reintroduction into. And I knew my audience. I knew they were 99% atheists. So I did stuff about God and the Bible, and I pandered the hell out of the audience, and it worked. And then I hosted all night, and it felt so good. I was like, I did it in DC, and then I was like, I'm doing this the second I get to LA.
Yeah.
And I got here and I was in LA for 3 months and did my LA launch party. For like my podcast moving to LA, and we sold out the room. And so the Comedy Store goes, "Hey, do you want to do a monthly show here?"
Oh, fucking
and
hell,
I went, "Yes, I do." So we worked out a deal, and now I've been doing it for. I mean, they didn't offer it immediately. It took a couple months, and they asked me to come back and do another one.
Sure.
And then after that one, I sold out again, and they went, "Okay, we want you back." And so
cool.
I've had that show for only about 2 years now.
All right. Well,
it's cool to get, and I can do anything I want with that show.
Well,
I can book anyone I want. I can.
And
it's
in
so
LA,
fun.
2 years is an old show. You know, I mean,
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, shows come and go all the time in LA, and to have one that's gone for 2 years. I mean, and I only know of a few that have gone longer than that, even. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're doing all right, man.
I know some that have been there for like 10, 11 years.
Yeah, I mean, of course,
a few.
Yeah,
a few.
But yeah, I mean, that is 1% of 1%. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah,
you're right.
So,
you're because a lot of them are little pop-ups in coffee shops or like, hey, it's Subway, and from 1 to 3 we have an open mic, and you're like, at Subway? Like, it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah,
it's next to the chips, but there's a microphone.
Yeah,
so
you
screw
could do
it.
that. Just right.
Bring your 6 friends.
Right over there by the Sun Chips. Just go tell your dick jokes.
It's like in Austin. That's how it is with musicians.
Is it? Yeah.
No matter where you go in Austin, there's a dude with a guitar with a bucket. Playing shitty Pearl Jam covers.
Right.
And you're like, here's $1.
And so I mean, because you got into podcasting in 2010, which is. I mean, that's before podcasting is cool,
Actually, I technically podcasted, and this is a line I like to use a lot because it's true. I brag that I did podcasting before podcasting was podcasting.
Yeah,
And because in 2003, when I say I had a radio show that I did, it was an internet radio show that was live streamed.
Oh.
And then later it would be archived. So meaning it was internet radio you could listen to later, which is a podcast. But the word wasn't invented until 2004.
Oh,
so I was doing it and people were listening to our web archives and there wasn't a word for it.
Interesting.
We just called it the archives.
That's wild.
So and then in 2004, the podcasting thing really kind of started launching, and then I got back into it in 2010.
Yeah.
I kind of missed the bubble. If I'd have stuck with it from then, I'd be Adam Carolla today.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, I mean, but still though, 2010 is pretty early. Like, I feel like people didn't. I mean, I don't even I didn't even know how to listen to a podcast until 2011. I don't think, you know what I mean? Like, so because
I still have people ask me, what is a podcast?
Yeah, all the
it still
time,
happens.
man.
Believe it or not,
Yeah.
I know people listening to this going, what? No, I travel all over the country, and then people will call. They'll be like, "All right, he's the host of the Dogma Debate podcast. Give it up for David Smalley." And I go up, and then later they're like, "Oh, you're really funny. What's a podcast?"
Oh, geez.
And I look at them for a second, going, "You're fucking with me."
Yeah,
they're not. They don't know what it is.
Well,
and I just go, "It's like Netflix for radio."
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, it's a perfect analogy.
Listen to it whenever you want. It's free.
Yeah,
check it out
on demand whenever. You, well, and it's funny too because like when I'm promoting my podcast on social media, I'll post the posts. I usually put up, I put together a little piece of artwork for each guest. Post that, and then the comments are all links. I have the Spotify link, the iTunes link, the Stitcher link, the RSS link, and I'll still get people like, how do you listen to this? I mean, literally just take your thumb and click, just close your eyes and it'll play. So yeah, I mean, I get it. It's still
there are people who I'm the same way. They follow me on Twitter. They follow me on Instagram. They're on our Facebook page where it's a public figure page. We post every episode. You do everything you can. It's on the website. There's links everywhere. People will text me and go, send me a link to your podcast. I'm talking about it with a friend. What?
Yeah.
I don't know what they have. I don't know if they have an Android. I don't know if they listen on Spotify or if they iHeartRadio. Like, you just, what do you want me? I don't know what to say.
Yeah, and then it's like, man, like, why am I your like wind up monkey here?
And
like,
even if I do, I appreciate the listener. So I send a link. They're like, oh, you sent the Apple link. He listens on Spotify. Do you want me to go log into my Spotify account and then Google it?
Yeah, please.
Type in Dogma.
Please.
Type in Dogma, and it'll come up. There's not a lot of shit called Dogma. I'm one of the top searches. Just find it.
Oh, that's so funny, man. Oh, it's wild. Well, yeah, we were talking about something out on the porch, and we were like, we should save. Oh, we were talking about a little about like listenership and taking a. You were telling me about a break you like to take every year, going out to Texas.
Yeah, I take some time off, but so people are often asking me because I've been able to do a somewhat successful podcast for so many years.
Incredibly successful.
And make a living doing it. Yeah. That's really the key. Success, the amount of money, the amount of downloads, none of that really matters. It's at the end of the day, it's are you comfortable living on it? And if you're comfortable living on it, you've succeeded at doing what you love.
Right.
And I get to do one show a week for 3 hours, and it pays my bills. And I'm so fortunate, man. It's because of my patrons. It's because of the ad revenue. Mm-hmm. It's because people share it. Even if you don't pay, if you share my show, you're helping pass it along. Mm-hmm. And so I get asked a lot of advice. How do I start a podcast? What do I do? Will you listen to mine? Can I get feedback? What's the secret? It's kind of like with comedy. There's really no fast track. You just got to have longevity. Yeah. You got to be in it for a while.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I saw an article today that they were like, thanks to people like Conan O'Brien, podcasting is really taking off. And I like Coco.
Yeah.
One of the few people I've actually paid to see in person. I think he's probably cringing at that article. Going, don't give me credit. I just started.
Yeah.
Like, you and I both have more podcasting experience than Conan O'Brien.
Well,
but he's being given this credit, and I bet you he doesn't want it. He's such a great guy. There's no way he's not spearheading this, I promise you. But there's no fast track, but what I will say for anyone starting one or in the middle of a podcast, you want to keep it successful, longevity and consistency. Mm-hmm. And here's why consistency matters. If you put your show out every Wednesday, for example, and you say you release it on a Wednesday afternoon because that tends to be your thing, the vast majority of your listeners are going to listen to you Thursday morning. So you putting it out and saying things like today, tomorrow, yesterday, try to avoid time-stamped words.
Interesting.
Like I just used in my previous 15 minutes. It's more about on this episode, and you say things like recently or coming up.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And then if you say coming up, say, but this podcast is going to air this day. So if it's past that date, it's already out. Go check it out.
Right.
But the deal is, if you put your show out on Wednesday and I'm your subscriber, 9 times out of 10, you're my drive to work.
Right.
You're my commute to work and probably home because I'm going to split it into a couple of sections.
Yeah.
Maybe listen a little bit on lunch. But Thursday is when you're going to see your spike. So if you don't give me content on Wednesday, I'm listening to something Thursday morning.
Right.
What's it going to be? I'm not just going to jam out the music and go, I'll wait for Dave to get around to putting out a new episode. Yeah. If I'm in the mood for podcast, if I've trained my brain to wake up to talk radio, I'm going to find something else to listen to. Mm-hmm. And when I find that something else to listen to, that might become their new Thursday ritual.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Burger King being across the street from McDonald's, and you go for breakfast every morning to Burger King, and then one day on a random Wednesday they go, we're just not going to serve food today. You're not just going to go to work hungry. You're going to go across the street. You're going to try that McDonald's breakfast burger, and then the next Wednesday you've got a little bit of a conflict.
Right.
Last week was pretty damn good.
That burger wasn't bad.
They teased something last week that they were going to talk to this celebrity next week. Let me go check that out. Yeah. And then you lose listeners. So you have to keep your listeners by being consistent.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Trust me.
Yeah.
I'm about to do episode 420, and I'm telling you, and I only started counting in 2012. So the first 2 years of my episodes are just gone. They're not even counted as part. I started over at number 1 in 2012.
Oh, wow.
Because I reformatted the show. Same name, but I reformatted it. And it's still hard for me to put it out at the same time.
Yeah.
And its reason being, like, for example, we're sitting here today on a Monday. Tuesday. I'm supposed to put my show out on Wednesdays. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to drive back tonight after this comedy show, but we might end up staying another night if we stay too late, right?
Yeah.
As far as I know. I mean,
Right, yeah, I mean, you can
but
totally
if that happens, if the comedy travel pushes me out and I don't get home until 1 or 2 o'clock tomorrow, I'm not going to have time to do a podcast on Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
And so if I have to, or I drive straight home and immediately record, and then I don't have time to release it because it takes a couple of hours to do the processing and whatever compression to get it out.
Yeah, right.
And so it is really hard to stay consistent.
Yeah.
He's in there doing acting class.
Yeah, I
think he just is oblivious to other people existing.
I think sometimes, yeah.
It's weird. I love him. But
it's our buddy Isaac Allen. He is in my spare bedroom, and he is just shouting into the sky.
He's doing, so he got sick and missed an acting class, and now he's on FaceTime doing his acting with the person during our podcast, and he's just screaming at the top of his lungs. And there's one wall between us, maybe 2 in a hallway. I mean, the first night we stayed here, I don't know where I think you got up and left or something. He wakes me up. He goes, "Bro, you want to get breakfast?" And I was like, "No, man, I'm going to sleep a little bit." And he goes, "All right, you can sleep. It's totally fine." I go, "Okay." And then he picks up the guitar and starts playing Dave Matthews. And I'm like, what is he doing? Like he thinks I can sleep through this?
God,
it was so funny. I love him to death. It was cracking me up because like there's no way I could go back to sleep. I was laying there tapping my foot to him jamming out to Dave Matthews. And that's a kind of a thing we share. It's a bond we have is Dave Matthews. So part of me is like, he did this shit on purpose. He's out here jamming the guitar.
Oh, man.
And he was just, I don't know, he was singing so loud. Yeah. I'm like, I wish they could see how close this couch is to the bedroom. Where I was. It was so funny. I'm like, Isaac, what are you doing?
It's so and that's part of what I love about what I do here is there is like an element of chaos to this podcast that I really do love. Like, because there's a lot of situations that I record with a comedian and I'll have another comedian in the house and I think
just yell things out or something.
Sometimes, it's just because I really like, I mean, all this is a conversation happening at my kitchen table,
right?
And I love to like draw the.
So here's another thing about that,
sure.
And the reason why we're not telling him to shut up, and the reason why that kind of stuff is cool. And anytime I have a drink, people think when they're guests they should pretend that drinks don't exist and they want to put everything on a paper towel. And I will intentionally do things like this.
Right?
And then drop that. I gotta throw my wallet on the table. And here's what's funny about that. For years in live radio, we were taught not to let any of that stuff bleed over. Everything's padded.
Yeah.
But think about it with a podcast. That person, that listener, feels like they are a part of a conversation.
100%. I love it. Yeah.
Hearing all of the drink hit the table or hearing a bottle. Yeah. Like there's a guy, Russ Martin in Dallas. He opens a bottle of Jack and you hear the. And you hear the cork pop out. And it's just like, or the top thing, just and then they pour it, and sometimes it's just silent. He's just pouring it. He'll hold on a second.
Well, there's one episode.
And they feel like they're in the room. It's something magical about that.
Yeah. So, well, like there's one episode. It's an episode with a comedian Kelsey Lane where like we decided to get drunk, and so we're drinking on the podcast, and it's like after a show. And I didn't hear it. I didn't notice this until I listened back to it later. But like Ashley Johnson is sitting on the couch and I'm actually talking to Ashley. And while I'm doing that, Kelsey, maybe not aware that she was as close to the microphone as she was, she's literally just drinking a bottle of wine. And you can hear the cap slowly spinning, like as she's taking the cap off of it. And then you can hear her like take this huge drag of wine. And it's all while talking. And it's just sort of this weird like audio crossover that like I didn't know it was happening. And then when I listen back to it, I'm like, oh, it's fucking rad. Like,
that's cool. So people like being genuine. At the end of the day, man, in the performance arts, regardless if you're a musician or a comedian or an actor, Broadway, musical, it doesn't matter. There's one rule for all of us. Never go on stage with an animal. Well, why is that? Because the animal is going to do whatever the animal wants to do. It's so genuine. It might take a shit. It might just look at you. It might sniff somebody's butt. It is just going to be itself. So everybody stares at it. So why not have a podcast that is just real? And people can listen. Nothing's manufactured. Nothing's edited out. This is just what it is. People fall in love with that, man.
I do. And it's what I love about podcasting. It's the type of thing, and so, hey, how you doing? How was the class?
Yeah, we heard most of it, and so did his listeners.
Sounded like you were killing it, bro.
It's all that Westworld experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
See it,
What?
We could even see it because I was at a friend.
Oh,
yeah.
that's good.
But yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of like circle back around to what you were saying before. I mean, consistency and being genuine, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes it feels like with this, I mean, I have like a decent audience. They reach out. They're nice people. A lot of times it feels like I'm just shouting into the sky. But either way, the people that do reach out and tell me I'm like, oh, that's enough for me for this week. Like 3 or 4 people reach out and say, hey, good job. I really enjoyed your podcast. I'm like, that's all the valid, like all the justification I need at that point.
That's really cool, and I think that's a lot to do with stand-up comedy too.
Sure.
And I hate to get cheesy, but there's one thing that I absolutely love about doing stand-up is there's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
A lot of bad shit. A lot of good people are having a lot of bad times.
Yeah.
And even if everything in your life is pretty decently okay, you deal with a lot of shit. Like you deal with loss, or you deal with car troubles, or you deal with stress or nervousness or anxiety, or you just name it. And when I get to be a part of a comedy show where I think for about 90 minutes, people are just not thinking about all the bullshit going on in their life.
For sure.
And they're just laughing.
Yeah.
There's something great about that. I don't know, even if I get paid for it, it feels like I'm just doing something good.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would feel that way about stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I was like, I think I'm a funny dude. I think I can do that. I want to get on stage and make it happen. It was selfish.
Right.
But once you get into it and you see that shift you're having, it kind of makes you go, man, this is... In a weird way, I'm kind of doing something good for the world.
There's a
It
magic.
feels cool.
You're making magic. Yeah, it's
pretty
great.
cool.
Well, you're David Smalley.
I am.
And this is a podcast called Sad Dad.
Yep.
Where we talk about our dads. And you're a double threat. You have a dad and you are a dad.
Yes.
And I don't give many dads on the pod. There's not a lot of comedian dads. I think you're maybe only the 3rd or 4th dad I've had on and
See,
72
that's because I got laid before I started doing comedy. That's the thing. Yeah, that's the bad part.
It's trickier than people think. That's so funny. But and I was talking to you about this yesterday. I kind of like to start like at the beginning, and unpacking the dad thing. Where did your dad grow up? Was he?
We should
from
explain
Texas?
that sound too.
There is
have
a
another studio
very
guest.
handsome boy in the room named Thorin Oakenshield. And he is an 88-pound American pit bull, bulldog, American bulldog.
Bulldog. Yeah, it's bulldog.
Yeah. Oh, there he is.
See,
Dude. He was just saying hi to the audience.
He's just saying hi. He's just being a cool guy.
That it was like that sound that he made the other day when I was fighting with him. And I felt so bad.
Yeah,
but it was way louder and it was longer. He held it out and I felt so terrible.
Yeah,
man.
he's such a sweet guy.
Yeah. And immediately he was like, no, let's keep playing. He was shoving the ball and I was like, I just need to hug you for a minute.
I'm hurt on a spiritual level.
Yeah. And I'm super allergic, and I hugged him with face and all, and then immediately went to the bathroom and had to wash my everything because I would break out like crazy. But I felt so bad.
Yeah. Okay. Where do we? Is your dad from Texas also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Born and raised in Texas.
Is he?
Yeah.
What kind of kid is he? Yeah. I mean, is he like you? Was he kind of a?
No, I don't really know. He died last year, by the way, in 2018, on my daughter's birthday, by the way.
Sheesh.
Yeah, and it was, so he grew up kind of a farm kid.
Did he?
Yeah, he was super like into farming and he just wanted to have gardens and shit. He's really simple, dude. Really simple.
Yeah.
He just wanted to hit a clock, drink a beer, have some Crown at night, and just get his bills paid. Like, he's the guy that they'd be like, all right, be here at 8 a.m. And he'd get there at 6:30 and like make coffee and open all the bay windows and change it off the clock. Like every day for a couple of hours, he would go around and get the newspaper and take the sports section out and give it to the boss man and lay it on his desk. Not servant, but just awesome guy. Just really nice.
It sounded like a nice little
country
ritual for him too.
Yeah, he just liked having something to do.
Yeah. That's real.
Yeah, he's really, really simple dude. He just wanted to have a garden, and like I walked into his house one time and he had a pellet gun, and he was like a rifle pellet gun. He was leaning over his kitchen table, out a window, And I walk into his house and he goes, it's like that Elmer Fudd moment where he just goes, shh, squirrel. I was like, Dad, don't shoot the squirrel, man. Please don't shoot a squirrel. And he whispers, that little fucker has it coming. And then, pop. I look out the window, there's a squirrel flopping around. I'm like, Dad, God, why? He goes, he's been eating my goddamn tomatoes.
So he's just
okay.
He's just a corn-fed Texas boy, huh?
Absolutely.
Growing up out there.
That's it. Yep.
What kind of work was he doing? You said he was working at
he did a lot of maintenance stuff. He did a lot of like he would work for probably his proudest moment. He's a big Dodge guy. His proudest moment probably was working for a Dodge dealership as a maintenance man.
Yeah.
And like I would go on like websites like ZipRecruiter, who's one of my sponsors, or somebody, and I would look up these jobs that would pay him $50,000-$60,000 a year because he's got 35 years experience in shipping, receiving, or maintenance.
Yeah.
He could be like director of maintenance, or he never wanted it. He's like, I don't want to put up to other people's bullshit. I don't want to be a manager. He goes, I want to hit my clock. I want to go home. I want to have my beer, and I want to get my bills paid. And there's something to be said for that,
dude. There's a quiet virtue to it, and in fairness, he's not wrong. It's a lot of bullshit, man. Like,
it is
corporate America.
It's finding happiness on a different level.
Yeah.
It's not. He's definitely different from me in that.
That's true. Yeah.
I strive to not be that. But that's what he liked, and he was happy.
Well, yeah, I mean, like being perfectly okay with who you are and where you are. Like, I mean, that's, I think, an impossible thing for some people. And like I said, we always kind of like want to, we almost want to like poo-poo that sort of thing. Like, oh, you're fine with who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Like,
how dare you?
Yeah.
How come you don't have the same ambitions I do?
Yeah, but why aren't you like racked with anxiety and depression? How dare you?
And really, it's just jealousy. It's going, how have you found happiness?
Yeah.
And without all the things I think I need to find happiness.
Yeah, it's just like a real Zen outlook on life that I don't think gets enough credit for being kind of a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
And so yeah, well, good for him on that. And so what's like? I mean, I know you said your folks split up when you were pretty young. Was he still like kind of like real involved though, or I mean, what was?
So not really at first. And there's a deep, dark story behind this, and I'm gonna tell you on this because it's comedy, I guess.
We have fun here. Yeah.
Fuck it. So I could not figure out for the life of me why. By the way, he had one of those things hanging up in his kitchen my whole life.
Oh,
I don't know what that's called. Is it a fruit basket?
Yeah, fruit basket.
That
Like
exact
hanging,
thing.
Yeah.
My whole life, he
That's
had
so
one
funny.
of those fruit baskets.
It's
That
so
exact
funny.
thing.
When my ex and I broke up, she took that, and I drove to her house, and I took it back.
I think that's called breaking and entering. But okay,
It was in her trunk, but yeah.
So anyway, so he wasn't really he was very distant. He was really distant at first.
Yeah.
And I never figured out why. I never blamed myself. Like a lot of people sit in therapy and go, "Oh, my dad wanted nothing to do with me." It was never like that. And I was also really resilient. I was highly resilient in that, like, I'm like, I just did shit on my own. I mean, I was like scared of grasshoppers until I was 16. But then this cop down the street kicked my ass one day because I beat him at a football game on a video game. And he just like beat the like we fought. I was like 15 or 16. We fought, and it was so intense. I'd never had my ass kicked like that in my life.
A cop?
And like, a cop. And I my lip was bleeding. I had some kind of bruise on my forehead. I felt like I was this close to death, and I was laying in his floor, and I stood up and I just went, "Will you show me how you did all that?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he started showing me like cop chokehold stuff. Then I got into jiu-jitsu and I got into martial arts and ended up fighting in tournaments. And that was a big part of what took me into a weird thing of manhood. And so being scared of grasshoppers, I was like, that grasshopper's never choked anybody out. Like, I have no reason to be scared of that little bitch. And so, but my dad was so distant, and I didn't really know why. I just thought he was a terrible father for some reason. I think that's kind of what we think when we're kids.
Yeah.
And then I found out something he never told me, he never talked about. And this is the first time I think I've ever talked about this publicly, actually. I found out that when he was 19, so I wasn't born until he was 29. So 10 years before I existed, he actually killed a 4-year-old boy who ran out in front of his car.
Oh my God.
So he was going down the street, and there was an ice cream truck, and this little boy had just bolted out in front of the street and ran to the ice cream truck.
Oh, man.
And he didn't have any money. He just was like, I want ice cream. And the ice cream guy was like, you got to have money, kid. And the kid went running back across the street without looking, and my dad ran over him. And he just couldn't stop. He hit him.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, terrible. And then my dad apparently stayed at the hospital with this kid for like 4 days.
Jeez.
And then the kid died.
Oh.
And my aunts, my grandma, anytime they would talk to me about it, they didn't tell me about it till my grandma died when I was a late teen. So I knew about it around that time, but I never put the pieces together.
Yeah.
They all said he came home a different person.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's like coming back from war. I mean, it's that level of PTSD. I can't imagine how many years he had nightmares. And then 10 years later, having a perfectly healthy boy, could you imagine the guilt?
Yeah, yeah.
So pushing me away, being away from me, I always thought was like he felt guilty for having me because he took someone else's kid.
Yeah.
And so when someone treats you like shit in life or you think you're not being treated fairly, it is still important. And I try to do this on my podcast as well. Think about how they became who they are, because it might not be as much of their fault as you think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I used to bitch that my dad would just chug Crown and cry at the table, he was mourning the death of a little boy. And I didn't understand that as a 15-year-old. I was like, my dad's a piece of shit, and it's just, I didn't understand. So I was rebellious. I was angry at him.
Yeah.
And then I found out later in life that that's what had happened. And then it started to make sense why he was kind of distancing himself. Mm-hmm. And then I had this whole other revolution when my daughter was born. And I go to, she's tiny, tiny, wrapped up in a blanket.
Yeah.
And I go, meet your granddaughter. And I hold her out for him to take her. And he holds his hands up and goes, no, I don't want to break it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I was sort of overwhelmed again. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
He was afraid to hurt me. Right?
Yeah.
He was afraid to break me because in his first of all, therapy's for pussies. That's why God made whiskey. Right. So there's no go talk to a professional. Let's go work through the problems. He's a Southern boy from Texas. He wouldn't do that. Right. That I think he.
Yeah, this is Texas in the 1970s. So
exactly. And so actually right at 1970.
Oh wow.
So just after the turn of the 60s. So he was.
God.
Yeah.
That's
so
a lot to deal with.
Yeah, so that's why he drank. That's why he was so distant. Yeah. And when I was about 31 or 32, about 7 years ago, this all came together in my head as one big story. I was like, I get it. Yeah. And by the way, I'd given him a shitty Father's Day card one time because he was never around. He wasn't calling me. And I gave him a Father's Day card that was like, you're not even a father, and blah, 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 blah. And I was kind of ripped on him. Yeah. And all he said was, I'd rather have no card at all than to have this card. And I said, I'd rather have no father at all than to have you as a dad, because this hurts worse. You're right down the street. And you never have anything to do with me.
Right.
And we had it out, and he understood, but he wasn't the type to come apologize or talk. He was just an old country boy. Again, it was just like, let's just pretend like it never happened. And the next time I see you, hey, son, how you doing? And just pat me on the back. And that sounds exactly like him, by the way.
Does it?
Because we can do that with our dads, right?
I got a solid dad impression.
Yeah. And so and his thing was, howdy. It's like hi and howdy. Howdy. Yeah, howdy. Yeah. It's really loud, too, because he was hard of hearing. So he yelled everything.
Sure.
And so I put the pieces together, and I kept going, I need to sit down with him and go.
Yeah, because
I need to sit down with him and go, I got to tell him. I understand and I appreciate where he's coming from.
Yeah, because at the same time, too, because you have your own feelings. You know,
yeah.
I mean, your feelings are valid, too, and you're trying to, like, give him this space, to of understanding and empathy. But
here's the thing. He never knew that I knew about the little kid.
Oh, wow.
That was a deep, dark secret that he thought the family kept just between, like, three of them, his sisters and his mom.
Yeah.
He had no idea that they told me one day. And so part of it was, I was scared to break the trust of his sisters. Sure. I was scared because, and also whenever you get ready to approach someone to say, I forgive you, there's always that fear in the back of their mind that they're going to go, I didn't do anything wrong. Fuck you. I don't need to be forgiven. And you don't want to have that either. So
Yeah,
that was a
right.
little fear. I think most of it was, I didn't want my dad to be like break down and cry because he wants to be this manly man. It was just such an uncomfortable conversation.
Right.
And he'd never had therapy. Didn't know how to process or validate, or he didn't know any of the rules of how people talk to each other. If you've ever been to a therapy session or had any education in psychology, which is where I learned it. And so I kept putting it off. And then the plan was I was driving out because he's a big Dodge fan, and I just bought a Dodge Challenger, which was one of his first cars when he was a kid.
Cool. Yeah.
And I was like, I bought this car. I want to drive out and show it to him. And I was in LA. And the plan was I was going to drive out there and then hang out with him, and he's always drinking. But if I could catch him in the morning, I could sit down, we could have breakfast, and then I could go, I need to talk to you. And I was finally just going to tell him. And we made plans to have dinner, I think, on July 2nd or 3rd, because his birthday is July 1st. And June 25th was my daughter's birthday. So I'm in California, June 25th. The 26th, I was going to be in 12 Angry Men. I was one of the leads. So I was trying to study all this stuff and on my lines, and all this shit goes down at the house. I found out I have to move in 5 days. All this pressure's up against me. Crazy shit's going on in my house. I have this, and I got all this stuff going on, and my phone keeps blowing up, and it's all Texas phone numbers. And I'm like, I don't have time. There's like an emergency at my house, a lot of personal stuff with people I knew, and like a medical emergency. And I was trying to deal with all this shit. An ambulance was in front of my house. Cops were over. Jeez. It was hectic. I was stressing because I'm like, I have all this going on, and I have a play tomorrow. Like, I got to get my head clear. Right. And my phone keeps blowing up with these 817 area code phone numbers. Finally, the police and ambulance leave. The person who leaves in the ambulance that was hurt. I get on the phone, and it's my sister on my dad's side who I haven't talked to in 7 years. Yeah. And she's just crying. And I went, oh, no.
Oh, no.
I said, he's gone, isn't he? And she just cried harder, and I hung up the phone. I was like, God damn it. So I never got to have that conversation with my dad. Oh, jeez. And that if your listeners take anything from this, it's don't fucking wait.
Yeah.
Because I have to now live with that forever. If you're feeling it, say it.
Yeah.
Because you never know. Because my dad wasn't necessarily unhealthy. Mm-hmm. He was overweight and he drank a lot. But we weren't. I thought it was going to be a slow deterioration of liver. Yeah, right. And he was going to be like 80, going, I think I'm about to go. You know, and it wasn't. He was 69, and he was about to turn 70, and just boom. You know. Wow. So I think if I have those numbers right, but it was pretty. He died on his feet.
Did he really?
He was standing at a bath. So you know those podium bath sinks?
Oh, yeah.
A podium sink. He had one of those in his bathroom, and it was pulled out from the wall because he got dizzy, started to fall, grabbed the thing.
It was like an aneurysm? Or
no, they think it was a heart attack.
Was it? Yeah. Man, that happened. My ex-girlfriend's mom died in a similar way, where she'd always had she'd had high blood pressure. This is really sad in that her insurance lapsed, and she got onto a new policy, but there was like a month where she couldn't, and she didn't tell the family because she didn't want the family to worry about the fact that she wasn't on her medication. And she was a ticket taker at a movie theater, and she was taking a ticket, and then she just fell back, like, you know, just collapsed backwards and was dead on the spot of a brain aneurysm. Yeah, it's crazy how quick. Yeah, and you're right though. I mean,
just have the conversation. Just do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
because I promise you, no matter how uncomfortable the conversation is, it's way more comfortable than what I'm feeling now. Yeah, and every day I have to go through this. Man, I should have had that talk with my dad. You know? It's because the last thing I told him about him as a father is that he sucked at it.
Yeah.
I never got to say, I know why you were so terrible, and I understand.
God.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah, it sucks, man.
Well, let's lighten it up a little bit.
Well, I'll lighten it up right here.
Oh, go ahead.
For the first year, it's when you lose somebody close to you like that, it's really it's difficult to process. It's weird, especially when they've been a part of your life for so long. Yeah. Because we did start getting closer as I got older. He could deal with a man. Yeah. He was the little boy that fucked with his head, you know. Right. And I remember I was walking through, he died in June, and I think around November, I was walking around Home Depot, and I saw this thing, and I was like, oh, that'll be great for my dad for Christmas. And then, boom. I'm like, oh. Yeah. And then I walk, and then I'm not shitting you. You think this wouldn't happen, but 15, 16 minutes later, I would walk by something else and be like, oh, Father's Day next year, I need to.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's when it hit me. And I went, I am going to save so much money this year.
You son of a bitch. That's funny.
I tell a lot of jokes about my dad on stage. He's a big part of my act. Yeah. I haven't done that much here, but I tried a different 15, but I have a lot of stuff.
I love it, man.
And I know he would love it too.
Yeah, that's great. And you are a dad. That's I mean, and you said your daughter's 15.
Yeah, she's 15.
Yeah. That's great, man. I mean, I don't know. Talk a little about that. I mean, any dad insights? I mean, you're further along in the dad adventure than I am. My daughter's only 8. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know. What are some insights you've gained as a father?
I think my next book is going to be about parenting.
Yeah.
My daughter is that amazing.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
I've done a lot of things that are unconventional, but they've really worked with her.
Because you're a single parent too, which I relate a lot to that. Yeah. I mean, single dad parents,
Well, and I'm a single dad with absolute full custody. Like
that's
100%.
Wow.
Like she's with me all the time.
Yeah.
She has a decent relationship with her mom, but she's my full-time responsibility.
Yeah. Good for you.
Here's the best way I can put it. Be real with your kids. Don't lie to your kids. Mm-hmm. Understand that your job is to teach them how to live without you.
Right.
As morbid and sad as that sounds, that's one thing my dad did a damn good job of.
Yeah.
Is teaching me to live without him. He would give me little tips here and there, just little things about cooking or smoking a brisket or little stuff over the phone. Just little things. Just encourage them to do shit on their own at a very young age.
Right.
I taught my daughter to use a steak knife at 3 years old. Mm-hmm. And there's not a parenting book in the world that's going to tell you to give your 3-year-old a steak knife.
Right.
And I would take the actual blade part and I would tap it on her finger and I would go, this is, feel how pokey that is? And then I would put it in front of the meat and I would slide the rigid edge across the meat and I go, see how that cut that steak open? If you did that to your finger, that's really going to hurt you. And kids aren't dumb.
Yeah.
I was giving her independence. And so we would go to a restaurant when she was 4 or 5 and she would grab a steak knife and just cut into her steak. I meet 12-year-olds that don't know how to cut their steaks today.
Yeah.
And so I know this sounds stupid, but it's sort of symbolic. If I'm on my deathbed, or if you're on your deathbed, you don't want your daughter going, Daddy, please don't go, I need you. Yeah. That's terrifying. Right. What you want is, Dad, I'm going to be fine.
100%.
You did it. Relax and let go. You don't have to hurt anymore. Yeah. That's what we want to hear. And so I've been kind of preparing myself for that moment by just giving my daughter as much head start in life as she can.
Yeah.
So traveling that I didn't get to travel. When I go on the road, I'll take her with me. When there's a bunch of college kids hanging out, I'll be like, go talk to them, go hang out with them. I always made her order for herself at restaurants. Always. 4 years old. Point at it. I don't care. Talk to them. And then when she got a little older, little kids point, say the words. If you don't know how to say it, ask the waiter, how do you say this? Because the next time you order it, you want to be able to say it. Like, it's all about making progress as a human.
Yeah.
And I think because of us doing that, my daughter and I are really close. And so when her teenage friends now try to get her to do hood rat teenage shit, she doesn't do it. And she doesn't say, I don't want to get caught. I don't want to get in trouble. She goes, me and my dad are really close and I don't want to let him down.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't want to do anything that's shady to me.
Right.
Building that kind of relationship with your kid, I think, is just invaluable.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, man. Yeah, and to your point about raising them to be independent, people, because ideally, like you want them to turn 18, and they're like, hey, thank you so much. I'm gonna strike out on my own. Obviously, that's
not working.
It was never perfect, but when it's a funny. I don't know if this is the same for you, but. For me, a dating red flag, like I'm not opposed to dating a mom or another parent by any means, but when she is like 100% about her kids and nothing else, that to me is like a little bit of a red flag because it's like, oh, do you know, like you can't see how that is going to play out. You know, like you're ignoring your personal life, and then you have no personal life, and then your kids someday are going to be grown-ups, and they're going to leave your house, and you're going to be all alone.
Well, and think about the disservice you're doing to your kid.
Yeah.
You are so involved in their lives that they need you every step of the way. Right. And so many parents are codependent. They need to be needed by their kid. So it's like they're
not talked about.
Not going to want. I have to tuck them in every night. I have to rock them to sleep. I have to. No, you don't. In fact, you're doing that kid a disservice, because one day when you can't rock them to sleep, they are going to be a nightmare for some babysitter.
Yeah.
My daughter was not like that. As a matter of fact, she cut her hand open one time she got up on a cabinet and grabbed something and then tripped and fell and cut her hand open. And we rushed her to the hospital. She was getting a shot in it, and the nurse told me to hold her down, right? Like on a bed like this. I realize I'm doing it for podcast, so imagine pushing a kid back on a bed on their back and then just pinning their arms to the ground while they're getting a shot in their hand.
Oh my God.
I wouldn't do that. So what I did instead is I held my daughter facing me and I hugged her. Right, so my arms are around her back, and her arms are around my back.
And the nurse can get.
And I turned my back to the nurse and let them give her a shot while I was holding my daughter.
Right.
It's so much more of a comforting way.
Yeah, and it's come from a place of love.
Sure.
You know? Yeah.
But my daughter said, as she was like 3. And she goes, "Daddy, I'll sleep in my own bed. Let's just go home. I'll sleep in my own bed. Let's just go home."
Oh, she thought you were
yeah, I'm like, "You're not being punished." Like, I felt so terrible. I'm like, "We're helping you." She's like, "No, I promise. I'll just sleep in my own bed." She's like, "Just let me get out of here. And I'm not going to bother you anymore." So, because we were always telling her, go to your own bed.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be the happiest when your kid is independent. That's what makes you proud. Yeah. No parent is like, "I am so proud that she needs me for everything." What are you trained her to be that way, and now you're like, "God, she's so needy." You're the one that had to sleep with her until she was 12.
Yeah, right.
Don't let her sleep in your bed. Force her to cook. I don't give a damn if it's a Hot Pocket. Make her microwave her own shit.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to have them have independence. And I think one of the worst things you can do as a parent is be a helicopter parent. Yeah. If you see your kid struggling, as long as they are not about to be catastrophically injured, let them fail.
Yeah.
Damn it. Think about all the things you're good at now, all the things you learned about in life, and how you got that way. It's a list of failures that made you good at shit.
Oh,
so if you don't let your kid fail, you are preventing them from being good at stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. And it's even harder when you know how hard it is. Like, you know how much it hurt when you were a kid to like go through that.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, you just gotta. It's tough, man. But you're nothing. I don't disagree with a single thing you just said.
And it's hard. One of the hardest things to do as a parent is to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Because we want to save, we want to help, and every now and then, I'll even catch myself as well versed as I am in it. I'll catch myself. Like, my daughter will be trying to reach to grab something, and I'll see her like going for it in the cabinet, and I'll go, "Hey, there's another pan up there. She'll go, "Dad, just let me drop it on my head, and then I'll know not to do it next time." She will correct me in my bed, and I'm like, you know what? A pan on the noggin isn't catastrophic. I should have taken my own advice and just done it. And like, I'm trying to be helpful. She's like, "I can kind of see the handle though, Dad." I'm like, "I'm trying to help you. You know what? Never mind. I hope next time you smash it on your face."
That's so funny.
You know, and we had that sort of back and forth. But
I had a moment like that just this last weekend with my daughter. She was playing a softball game, and she was out. She's in the outfield, and she loves softball. She's very good at softball. She's always got her head in the game, but I could see her out there, and she was kind of like squirming a little bit, and she was like looking at the ground. She was kind of squirming, and she's like looked like she was trying to focus, but like I could see it just even from where I was in the bleachers. I could see this like look on her face, and I was like, "Oh, something's not right." Like, and
you gotta go to the bathroom.
I was like, I bet there's a bunch of bees out there. And she's got a severe phobia of bees. And so the inning ends, they're coming back in, and I run down to the fence, like, as they're running in the dugout. And I was like, "There were bees out there, weren't there?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then she starts to cry. And I was like,
"You're going to be fine, honey. Just go get your helmet on. You're up next."
But I was just like I was like looking at her, and I could see something was wrong, and then I kind of figured it out. I was like, oh god,
Yeah.
and like everything in your as a dad, you just want to like run out onto the
And
field
just punch those bees in the face. I got you, sweetie. You focus on the ball.
Yeah, and so yeah, I was kind of. I mean, she kind of lost her composure a little bit as she was getting back into the dugout, but she was a brave kid dealing with her bee phobia.
That's so funny. I can always tell even today when my daughter's like holding pee in and not wanting to go. She'll shift around and she'll like start bouncing one knee, and I'll go, hey, you need to go to the bathroom. Dad, I'm fine. Go to the bathroom. And she'll get up and stomp off and go to the bathroom. But other than that, she's on top of stuff.
That's great, man.
My daughter's really organized. She makes lists on a whiteboard for all the stuff she wants to get done that day before she goes out.
Dude, that's better than I'm a fucking 33-year-old man and I'm not that organized.
Yeah, she's super organized. I kind of pass that down to her. I have a list on a notebook that I keep.
Oh, nice.
And she does it on a whiteboard. And we have a whiteboard in the living room because, and I strongly recommend whiteboards in various parts of the house because there are tons of things where there are teaching moments.
Oh, yeah.
And it's cool to be able to just visualize it and draw it out. One example is we watch Shark Tank together. We don't watch a lot of TV shows, but we watch Shark Tank. And what I do is, you've seen it, right?
Yeah,
they walk out and they go, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I have this company and I would like $200,000 for 10% equity. I pause it right then. And I go, what's the company valuation?
Yeah.
And she's like, what? I was eating Cheetos and I looked at my phone. I got a Snapchat from a cute boy. What did you say? What was the company valuation of this? I wasn't listening. I run it back. I play it again and I pause it. And I will not hit play until she goes to the whiteboard and figures out the valuation. And she's gotten to the point where she does 90% of them in her head.
Oh, good for her. Yeah.
Really, sometimes complicated ones that I have to do on a calculator, she's doing it in her head.
Oh, good. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and she gets really close. And sometimes when it's a weird one, like $243,000 for 13.5% of my company, she'll in her head and be like, within $50,000 or $60,000, she'll get it in her head. I'm like, damn, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So little teaching moments like that, like don't be afraid to turn something into a learning or a teaching moment.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Well, this is a part of the show. I mentioned this to you yesterday. I forgot to give you a reminder about this, but this is a part of the show where I ask for like a dadictote, like either a favorite story. In your case, I mean, if you have a favorite story from being a dad, or like, or a favorite story about your own dad. Or if you got two in the chamber, I mean, you've already told a bunch of wonderful stories.
Yeah, I should have saved one of those good ones.
Yeah. And if you don't, that's fine. Through the miracle of editing,
there's plenty. Just put somebody else here. Whatever story they told, and then isn't that great? I mean, no, I wanted to give you a little editing. No, so I'll tell you this. My this is kind of stupid. My daughter.
I love it.
One day, anybody who has teenagers and you're getting ready for this. Your little sweetheart is going to go to bed one day and completely unexpectedly is going to wake up the next day an asshole. And it's going to be, and it's just a phase. It's going to be very short-lived. But every person I talk to who has a teenager, the shift is instant.
Really?
I mean, it is so bizarre. Like puberty does not fuck around. It is so strong and it's so immediately noticeable. So my daughter was always really respectful. We would like cuddle on the couch and watch SpongeBob and always so sweet. Would never say any bad words. And she would come up and say, like, she would ask, like, can I say this word and can I say that word? I'll go, what word? And she'll say, well, I heard it. It's shit. And I'll go, it's not really a good word to say. And I was like, okay. She wouldn't get in trouble. She never got in trouble for accidents. That's another thing I hate when parents do. Your kid drops a glass and you scream at them.
Oh, God.
You're just teaching them you're an asshole.
My daughter's mom does that sometimes.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it's
don't
so
do that.
bad. Yeah, you can't yell at them for stuff that they didn't do on purpose.
Right.
And so, and that you could be like, be more careful, but don't yell. Like you're just making them feel terrible about something they didn't mean to do. Right. Think about when your boss does that to you. Oh. The printer goes out, you didn't mean to do it, and they're screaming at you. All you're thinking is he's a jerk. You're not learning anything. Right. It's just damaging to the relationship. And I walk in the kitchen one morning, and I go, hey, sweetie, I asked you to do the dishes last night, and you didn't get them done. And she goes, Dad, cool your tits.
I'm sorry, I laughed.
And I love it. I tell that on stage. And I remember I got so offended because I was like, hey, it is calm your tits. or cool your jets. You're not even doing it right. Yeah, and so that's one thing that sticks out to me.
Yeah, that's so funny.
It was the moment where she got bitchy.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't mind saying that to my daughter. Sure. I'll be like, hey, don't be bitching at me. As a matter of fact, I have a monthly, she hates that I say this because I tell people this all the time. I have a monthly reminder in my calendar that says prepare for the storm.
Oh.
And she'll be really shitty to me. She'll smart off. And I'll go, you need some Midol?
Ooh.
And she cracks a smile and then throws something at me. And we have this really fun relationship. She'll be like, Dad, no, I'm not even upset. And then she'll start laughing because she hears how bitchy it sounded when she screamed, I'm not upset. And so we sort of have this play fight leading up. And within a few days, it's down to a science. And the next thing you know, she's like, my stomach hurts. And I'll go, I bought you 8 gallons of Midol. We stocked up on everything needed for this moment. And that's what bugs me when they won't take the medicine and just be like, that's not it. It's definitely it. It's definitely it. So she's learning. And again, raised by 2 women really helps me with my daughter.
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
I gotta say. Because for me, dude, tampons, periods, bloating, girl problems, it was I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Like, never bothered me. I was just a part of it. As a matter of fact, my first time of being a comic, I was 5. I remember my mom had a bunch of women around. And I thought, I had this brilliant idea. I'm like, this bit's going to kill. I'm 5. Like, this bit's going to kill. I grab a little washcloth, a little ripped and tattered washcloth out of the linen closet. And I run over into the middle of the living room and I throw it down. And they all look at me. There's like 7 or 8 women around. I throw it down and I jump on top of it. And I go, look, I'm on the rag. Ha! And it got a huge laugh. I was like, this is going to be great.
It's a pretty good bit for a 5-year-old, man. That's hilarious.
I'm pretty proud of it.
Oh, David, you've been so fun today.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
If people want more David Smalley in their life, where do they find you? Where
David C. Smalley. That's where you find me. Everywhere. It's Instagram, Twitter, davidcsmalley.com. The email address is david@davidcsmalley.com. It's everything.
Good for you. Way to like get all of those handles.
It's all. I think I gave out my last business card yesterday, but that's the way the business card is designed. It shows the email, and then it's just like me, David, and then email address is the whole thing, and then Twitter and Instagram is just the David C. Smalley. It's a pretty cool design.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I'll link all your handles in the show notes.
Cool, man.
You've been so much fun today. Thank you so much for having
Thanks,
for being on, man.
Thanks for letting me do it.
And we're back. David Smalley, everybody. He's great. I cannot stop singing this guy's praises. He's such a nice guy, man. Like there's a comedian here in our scene, Greg Williams, who I should have on at some point. He's a very talented comedian, and Dave has been battling cancer. And Greg has been battling cancer, and David very graciously has been sharing his GoFundMe to help raise money for Greg and his medical expenses, and give a big shout out to Greg on his podcast, which is so nice, and the GoFundMe that we have set up. So that was really cool. And then and then we've got a benefit show coming up for Greg Williams on September 5th, and David's going to be performing on that with us too. So it's just really nice. And it meant a lot to me too, because David and Isaac were staying with me for they ended up crashing here for like 3 days, and this is kind of the whole thing. I mean, I run a bunch of comedy shows here in Fresno, but it is kind of a shoestring operation. I mean, I don't have a ton of money, and whatever money I make usually goes to the visiting talent. And a lot of it is a labor of love just to maintain a healthy comedy scene here in Fresno. And it's not often that visiting comedians kind of recognize that I'm not exactly raking in the dough on these shows, and I often lose a lot of money on it. I mean, I kind of make ends meet here and there. Yesterday, I'm not even joking. I rolled a bunch of quarters. I was rolling quarters because I wanted to make sure I had enough money to pay last night's headliner. I ended up being okay. I didn't have to I didn't have to come out of pocket at all to pay her, but I was like, I better make sure in case turnouts light, I can pay her what I promised. And so literally counting my change yesterday to make sure. And so having a guy like David come up and he kind of recognized that, and he saw that all of this is sort of a labor of love, and it was really gracious. I mean, he's the talent. I'm the promoter. I'm technically supposed to be, covering all of his expenses if I can, and I do, by putting comedians up here, and I'm always able to get them a meal at the shows. But David bought me lunch a couple of times, which was really, really nice, and then left me a little bit of money when he left, just for putting him up, and he justified it by saying, well, we didn't have to spend this on a hotel, so here's a little money for you. And I was like, he really didn't have to do that, but man, it just really meant the world to me, and like I said, I'm just kind of stringing this stuff along, so a little bit of money goes a long way for me, and it was just so nice and so thoughtful. He's just such a thoughtful freaking human being, man, and I can't thank him enough. So yeah, thank you, David. You're amazing. And we'll be back next week, like I said, with an episode with Isaac Allen. Gets real fun, real real, and then after that, well, I'll have to see who I have after that. I think I'm out. I've shot my wad. I've got to get back on getting some recordings done. So either way, though, guys, if you had fun, rate and review on iTunes, and then you can, if you want to help me out with some of the hosting fees for this show, there's the Sad Dad Patreon, and then you can reach out to me, saddadpodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's it for this week. You guys are the best. I love you all. Adios.